IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. On the podcast today, we take you on a spiritual journey to one of India's most underrated states when it comes to travel and tourism. We talk to Prasenjit Sharma as he takes us on a journey to the capital of Tantric worship in India. Let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So, with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Prasenjit Sharma, the founder of Kamakhya Walks and 6-Degree Adventures, to the Musafir Stories. Prasenjit, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and welcome.
Hi, Saf. It's a pleasure being on your podcast. Actually, it's really nice that we can talk about part of the country that has not been covered. And I look forward to talking about a subject that is very close to my heart, which is Kamakhya spiritual tourism in Assam.
Wonderful. No, thank you so much, Prasenjit. It's really glad to have you and really excited, like I said, to be covering a part of the country that unfortunately we haven't had a chance to cover so far in the five and a half years of Musafir Stories. So really excited and looking forward to this. The introduction I gave about you was also very short and concise, Prasenjit. So why don't you speak a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Basically, I'm born and brought up in Assam. But then I've had the privilege of studying and working in all four corners of the country. From quite early in my life, after my first job, I realized that the normal 9 to 5 suit and tie job was not for me. So I met some people and I took them around Calcutta. That's where I was living at that point. And I felt that tourism was a good fit for my interest. So then I pursued my master's in tourism and later on worked for some of the best travel companies in India. And after gaining the experience that I wanted, I started 6-Degree Adventures in 2017 and later started Kamakhya Walks early this year in 2022. Kamakhya Walks was kind of a result of what I felt was needed in the city like Guwahati, because Guwahati was being used more like a transit point for people traveling to other parts of Northeast. Heritage walks in the city had a lot of scope because I have worked for a heritage walking tour company in Calcutta. The place I selected was Kamakhya because of the depth and the vastness of the experiences that can be given to travelers. So that's basically how I came to start two companies.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And I completely agree that a place like Guwahati, it is high time that we start looking at it beyond like just a transit point, like you mentioned, right? There's so much more. And I have to admit as well, I had also been very ignorant about a lot of the things the city has to offer. And as a part of researching for this episode, when my eyes were kind of opened up to a lot of different places and very diverse places too, right? Usually we tend to tie Assam just to like Kaziranga, right? Like the nature part of it, but even from a spirituality, religion part of it as well, there's so much more to offer and even beyond that too, to be honest. So really looking forward to this session, to this recording with you, Prasenjit. Now, just to set some context up for our listeners, can you also please give us a little bit of a geographical context as to what part of India we are talking about, where exactly this is located, and also what is a good way to get here?
Yeah, sure. So Assam is known as the gateway to the Seven Sisters. So the northeastern states, which are basically 7 states, and then you include Sikkim, it makes 8 states, which is considered the northeast. And Assam, the capital of Assam being Guwahati, known as Dispur as well, has the best connectivity in terms of airways and railways. This is basically in the north, you have states like Arunachal, Nagaland, Mizoram, Tripura, and so on. And if you talk about international borders, we share borders with China, Burma, and Bangladesh. The closest international airport is Calcutta. Actually, there are other international airports, but it has got the best connections.
Yeah, very well connected by railways and roadways as well. Like you mentioned, it's the almost like a gateway to a lot of the other northeastern states as well that are not connected through railways. So very well connected. So getting here should definitely not be a problem. In terms of visiting here, what time of the year would you suggest or recommend would be a good time to visit?
So, if you talk about north of Assam, you have Arunachal, which is basically the lower Himalayas. So, to visit the lower Himalayas, the best time to visit is summers. So, that is from March to October. And for people who want to see snow and snow capped mountains, then winters is also a good time. But for considering about the other parts of Northeast, which is Nagaland, Assam, and so on, so it follows the normal tourist season like the rest of India, which is October to March. And this is the time where all the national parks are also open. So we have two UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which is Manas National Park and Kaziranga. And generally, this opens in October and closes in March. So when you're traveling, you want to see these things. So that is the best time to travel.
Yeah, definitely. If you're planning a broader itinerary beyond just Guwahati, then a lot of these things that Prasenjit called out do definitely make sense. So you can plan your trip and your itinerary accordingly. Just jumping into the meat of the conversation for today, right? We wanted to cover off one of your primary trout puller walks does cover the Kamakhya temple complex, right? The very, very iconic and famous religious and spiritual center in the northeast, the Kamakhya temple complex. Do you want to set some background about the place and its origin itself? Why the Kamakhya temple is so popular, and even in terms of the religious background, or who is the deity prayed to in this at this temple, and details like that, Prasenjit?
Sure. So, Kamakhya walks is basically we cover Nilachal Hill. So, Nilachal Hill is located, you can say, on the outskirts of Guwahati. This place has had a huge significance for Hinduism. So, Kamakhya is known as one of the main Shakti peeths. So, generally, people think that there are 51 Shakti peeths, but when Shakti peeths were actually given that name, there were only four Shakti peeths. That was two in Orissa, one in Calcutta, and one in Assam. So the Kamakhya temple is where the yoni, the reproductive part of goddess Parvati, is believed to have fallen. Those who are not familiar with the origin story as such, so Lord Shiva, who is the destroyer and also known as the Mahadev, the god of gods, his wife was Sati. Sati's father is Daksha, and Lord Shiva is not like the ideal son-in-law for anyone. So he is covered in, he covers himself with ash. He wears a tiger skin around his waist, and he has a ghost and a serpent around his neck. So
Yeah.
he is, by any standard, not the ideal son-in-law. And Daksha, the king, the father of Sati, held this huge yagnya, like a ritual. And to insult Shiva, he did not invite Shiva for this thing, and all the other lesser demigods were invited. So Sati, even though Lord Shiva told Sati not to go for this yagna, she still went. And when she saw that other people were making fun of her husband, the great Mahadev, she got very upset and jumped onto this ceremonial fire, and she basically died. So Lord Shiva, being the god of destruction, got very upset and started doing the dance of destruction, which is known as Tandav. And it is said that while he was doing this Tandav, the earth tilted on its axis. So the other gods like Vishnu and Brahma got very scared that if he continues dancing with Sati's body on his shoulder, the universe or the Brahman cosmos would be destroyed. So what they did is Vishnu basically sent his weapon, which is known as Sudarshan Chakra, and cut Sati's body into 51 pieces. And while Shiva was dancing, these 51 pieces fell across India and other parts of the world as well. So it is believed that the yoni, the reproductive part, fell in Kamakhya. So Kamakhya is known for tantric fertility worship. Now, coming to tantra, when you say tantra or tantric, it gives a negative connotation. We will get
Sure.
into that later in this talk, but tantra is just another way of worshipping. So let's say climbing the Mount Everest, you can climb by the north face or the south face. So it's similar way. You have different ways to reach whatever spiritual goal that exists, right? Talking about tantra, there are two types of tantra. One is called Shiv tantra, and one is called Shakti tantra. So Shiv tantra is believed to have originated in Kashmir, and Kamakhya is the origin of Shakti tantra. Okay, people who go to Nilachal Hill, who go to Kamakhya, the reason why we started Kamakhya walks is that when you go there on average there are 5,000 pilgrims who go to Kamakhya on a daily basis, and they are only concerned about visiting the sanctum sanctorium of the main temple. And in the sanctum sanctorium, you basically go down like a cave, and there is a body of water, and then you touch that water, and that is how you pay your respects to the goddess. What and in this sanctum sanctorium, there are three goddesses present. Basically, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Parvati. But here the names are Tripura Sundari, Kamala, and Matangi. What the pilgrims do not realize is that there are 10 other means in total there are 10 goddesses in this Nilachal hill, and they are known as the Das Mahavidyas. So Das Mahavidya basically means 10 great wisdom or 10 great sources of knowledge. So
Right.
what we try to do in this walk is that we try to take people who come on this walk to the different other temples which are overlooked by most pilgrims, and then we try and show them sculptures, and we talk about the architecture, and also the people who call Nilachal home have very important parts to play in the temple. And we want to actually, in our own way, put some positive light on tantric worship. So when you talk about tantric worship, people generally think black magic and voodoo and all of that. But this is
Right.
something very different. So that is what we're trying to do.
Very, very interesting, and thanks so much for such a detailed back rub. Just in terms of the duration of the walks, usually how long are these walks for?
So our basic walk lasts for about between 2 to 3 hours. So we
Okay.
start from the main temple complex and we end in the multi-level parking lot.
Okay.
We are going to cover the entire Nilachal Hill. So, talking about mythology, there's another story which talks about this demon called Narsasur. So, Narsasur wanted to marry goddess Kamakhya. So, goddess Kamakhya set him a challenge. So, the challenge was to build 3 staircases from sunset to sunrise before the cock crows. Okay. This demon is very powerful, and he was able to complete 2 staircases and was almost about to complete the third staircase. And this is when the goddess realized she did not want to marry the demon, so she took the form of a cock, like a cockerel, a hen. And then before the sun rose, she actually started cuckooing or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the demon basically lost the challenge and was not able to marry the goddess. So these are the
Yeah.
three
Interesting.
staircases. They're called the Ujjala path. So they are the old pilgrims. They used to walk up to the temple. So the Kamakhya temple is situated on the top of the hill. We are basically going to take people from the top of the hill to the bottom, showing them the old paths and the temples that are along the way. So that is going to be a full day kind of activity.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Um, and just in terms of the known history, is there a sense of like how many years old the site might be?
Yeah. So one of the premier institutions here, like universities here, is Cotton University. So some of the archaeologists there have done some kind of carbon dating. So they have been able to trace it back something like 2,200 years back. That is one of the figures that come up. But then, like general understanding of people is that it is built around the 18th century. So the temple has been
Right.
built and destroyed and rebuilt several times.
Right.
So general people think it's around the 18th century, but actually it goes back to something like 2,200 years.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. And also, do you want to touch upon a little the architectural style of these temples? That is also quite unique, right? It
Yes.
seems different from, let's say, a lot of the temples we see in South India or even those that we see in North India. It's very unique from those and almost like a fusion, you could say. So, do you want to touch upon that a little bit?
Sure. So Nilachal, the temples around Kamakhya, they have their own style of architecture, which is called the Nilachala style of architecture. So the Nilachala style is basically a combination of Nagara Hindu temple architecture and Indo-Saracenic architecture. So the Nagara architecture is what you see, that is the general Hindu temples. And Indo-Saracenic is the dome structures, basically Christian and Islamic architecture put together. So the temple, some of the
Right.
temples that you see is combination of Hindu, Islamic, and Christian architecture, and it has got its own name, which is Nilachal style of architecture.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now, when you go to Kamakhya, you will not get to see very many evidences of tantric worship, but through some friends who actually are some of the important families who have lived there for centuries, they have helped us develop the walk, and they have guided us with information and facts.
Yeah, very interesting. Because yeah, even I, while looking this up, there was mentions about. Again, this it wasn't very clear, like you mentioned. There was contradictory information from place to place, but there was this notion about this place being used for animal sacrifice in the past, and even now I don't think it's as much sacrifice, but you do find like goats and pigeons, etc., that are given away as offerings, right? Maybe you've.
Sacrifice is very much part of
Uh-huh.
the worshipping the goddesses, and also offering alcohol. So, what is controversial is human sacrifice. So, some people say that human sacrifices had taken place, which is a controversial. I will not say that it ever took place or anything, but there is some kind of folklore or myth about it. But talking about like sacrifices and alcohol, to get into the basics of it, is that there are 7 ways of worshipping any god. Okay, so the basic level is when you, as a child or something, your parents take you to a Shiv temple, a Ganesh temple, a Durga temple, etc. Like you go to a lot of different places, right? So this is basically building the minimum connection to spirituality or the higher beings, right? Let's just say that you visit all the different temples and then you're getting more and more spiritual. That is the beginning, step 1. And there are 7 steps in this way of worshipping. So after the 4th step, you have to take something called as diksha. So you will have to accept a guru will have to accept you, and you have to accept the guru. He will set certain guidelines of how you're supposed to live your daily life, what kind of practices you're supposed to do. And the interesting thing is that from the 4th step, tantricism starts, and it goes up 4th, 5th, and 4th to the 7th step. After the 4th step is where the controversy of tantricism exists. So in tantricism, you are supposed to, at a certain point, when you have gained some knowledge and let's say some discipline, you can do something called as the pancha makara offerings. So in the pancha makara offerings, you offer grain, meat, fish, alcohol, and the most controversial is sex. So it is not like you go buy a tandoori chicken and give it to the goddess. It is that you have to purify yourself, you have to purify whatever you're offering, and then for something you basically offer it to the goddess. And this is where it becomes controversial. So this is where it is called the left hand and the right hand practice. So the right hand practice is called dakshinachari. That is what you see all across India in most temples, where it is basically chanting of Sanskrit hymns and uh, offering certain flowers and so on. Whereas Vamachari, which is the tantric practices, is where you offer these five things which are controversial. Yeah, and if you ask anyone what is the goal of your spiritual practice or going to a temple, they'll say that we want moksha or enlightenment. But the goal of Tantricism is not only to gain enlightenment, but it is to have so much energy and so much purity in your body that the goddess that you're worshipping, god or goddess that you're worshipping, enters you, and then you become like a god. That is what is one of the objectives of Tantricism. To be honest, I will also not be able to speak in depth about Tantricism
Sure.
because I will have to take Diksha under a guru, and I will be able to teach those things to someone who's taking Diksha. So it is a secretive society in a way. So you cannot
Yeah,
go
no.
talking about this in public, in a way.
Yeah, 100%. I do completely agree, but at least even getting to know that this is what it is about and setting some background and context, it definitely does help clear up the understanding a little bit more, right? Like you said, it's not the complete understanding yet because of the way it's structured in itself, but again, just gives you a better understanding. So thank you for kind of calling this out. And the other interesting thing I also saw is the celebration of this festival called as Ambubachi, right? Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah,
Prasenjit?
absolutely. So you may see a lot of campaigns going around on social media, make periods normal and those kind of things, the new millennial generation. But as I told you, this temple dates back more than 2,200 years. And the Ambubasi festival is basically celebrating the menstruation cycle of the goddess. So this festival generally takes place around June or so. It is believed that the goddess is having her periods and she takes a break. So the temple is closed for a certain number of days. As I told you, generally about 5,000 people go to Kamakhya on a daily basis. During the Ambubasi Mela, the last estimate was 500,000 people showed up for those 3 days. And
Wow, okay.
this has been termed as the mini Kumbh. And people want to be there when after the 3 days, when the gates are opened, they want to be the first people to enter the temple. And you should see the crowds. It is just unbelievable. And during this time, traditional families of Assam will not even worship in their normal, altar at home. So no kind of worship takes place around Assam during that time. That is how significant it is. So we have been worshipping something like that, like menstruation cycle, which is considered very sacred here for centuries.
Yeah. A couple of interesting points I came across as well. Obviously, you mentioned that it is widely known in the area, and you have like over 500,000 people visiting the temple right after this period, right? The 3-4 day period when it's shut down. One of the things that of interest was that it is believed that even within the temple, right, like you mentioned, the Garbhagriha or the Sanctum Sanctorum, where there's technically speaking, there's no deity as such, right? It's basically a rock
Yes.
with a little bit of a crevice out of which there's water coming out, and it is believed that even that turns red during that period. I read a couple of accounts of this when I was doing the research, but I'm not entirely sure, so I wanted to check this with you as well, if there's something you come across. And also read about the river Brahmaputra, right? The river in the vicinity, that also turning red around this time. Have you come across any of this information?
I'll talk about the first part. It is like even the main head priests are not allowed to enter the temple at that time. What happens after the temple opens is there's this red cloth that is, if you can get the red cloth that is soaked in that water when the temple opens, it is considered like the best blessing that you can get. So I will not be able to tell you whether the water in the temple turns red, but that is a belief among a lot of people. But I cannot verify that. What happens is you give a red cloth and it is soaked into that water and it's given back to you, and that you keep it in your house as a blessing. And coming to the second part about the Brahmaputra turning red, that is the time when we have our annual floods. So a lot of erosion takes place, and you can say the Brahmaputra turns muddy, which may be considered turning red by some people. So,
Okay.
and it
Interesting.
does take a
Yeah.
lot of lives. So during the floods, so I guess that is the old.
Yeah, no, no. Cool. No, thank you for clarifying that bit for us as well. And just in general, speaking about the Kamakhya temple and the complex, within your work as well, when you're doing the walks and visiting these 10 different temples, any unique experiences or interactions that you would like to highlight for us, be it just in terms of the other temples like the Das Mahavidyas that you mentioned, or even interaction with, let's say, the communities that are there, right from the pandas to any of the other communities within the temple?
That's a very nice question. So when you talk about the communities and the people, it is like an ecosystem that was set up for the maintenance and the upkeep of the temple. So the old kings of the Ahom and the Koch dynasties settled people there who were needed, like who would clean the temple, who would provide security, do, who would perform different functions that are required to maintain the temple. When you talk about Hinduism, the caste system was one of the most common questions I had from some of the international guests. And when you explain the caste system, you say that the cleaners, are generally the lowest strata of society. But here, what is interesting is that the cleaners of the temple are called the Mali community. The Mali
Okay.
community is the first, every day, they're the first people to enter the sanctum sanctorium. When they are there, no one is allowed to enter. And they are the ones who remove the old flowers, who give the first bath to the goddess is done by the Mali community. And even the head priests are not allowed to enter this temple. So if you actually talk about that they actually are even ahead of the priest in some way, So the whole thing, if you look at it that way, it's like the concept of the caste system changes when you see that. Another interesting community which a lot of people may not know, and it is actually disappearing, is the Gayan Bayan community. The Gayan Bayan community, when you talk of people, when you just mention the name, they will consider uh, Vaishnavites. So in Assam, we had a spiritual leader known as Srimanta Shankardev. He started a Vaishnavite sect, and in that, they used to sing the praises of Lord Krishna. And there was one group who would play the drums and one group that would play the cymbals. Yeah, so this community is known as Gayan Bayan. Now, when you talk about Gayan Bayan, everybody considers it in places like Majuli or for
Sure.
Krishna worship. But there is a Gayan Bayan community for Shakti worship in Kamakhya, which hardly anybody knows. And the sad part is, one of like a huge treasure trove of information passed away last year, and his son does a normal 9 to 5 job in the government. So he does not have the information that we actually want. So these are the traditions that are being lost along the way. But there are some people who are still doing it, and we want to actually kind of provide them alternative source of livelihood. So we would want on a longer walk or so, like as I told you, the full day walk. We would like to end
Right.
it at their house when they can perform something, some kind of hymn or musical performance for the guest.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, you speak about an interesting situation as well, right? Because of the lack of, let's say, patrons for like these art forms, they're slowly dying out.
No, actually, I would like to interrupt you there. It's not like a lack of patrons, because what is interesting is that these families are supported by the temple. So when I told you about the Ambubasi Mela, so the prasad, the offerings,
Yeah.
a lot of people, even Ambani has donated a huge amount of gold to the temple. The Ekta Kapoor, I believe, comes to the temple. All these big celebrities come, right? But the prasad, the first prasad, these are the people, like this community, they are the ones who only get this prasad. And every day the bhog, right, khichdi or some food that is made
Yep.
in the temple, all these families are getting it. They are given that bhog from the temple. So even if they don't buy any rations or something, they get a meal at home without any expense. So it is not that they have to go out looking for a job, but as I said, even the Gayan Bayan or the ones who cut hair or do sacrifices, they have to take diksha. So diksha is it's this discipline that you have to follow, which is very difficult for a lot of people. And now with easier way out, like you can just go and you get a salary and this and that.
Right.
It's an easier way out. So it is not that they have to go out looking for money or something. It is that they have an easier way of living.
Yeah, it may not be as black and white as we think. There's a lot more nuance, and thank you for kind of explaining that to us as well. Just talking while we are discussing about the communities and the people, right? One other thing that often gets overlooked when we are talking about history of places within the subcontinent, within India or the region that was considered as India from back in the day is the Ahoms, right? Ahoms have been a very critical or a crucial part to Assam or this region, right? And one of the kingdoms that actually ended up ruling for a period of over 600 years, and they even don't get a lot of mention, right? If you're talking mainstream, be it media or being academy curriculums, school curriculums, whatever it is, we often miss that bit as well. Do you want to touch upon, at least a high level, about the Ahoms and their contributions to the region, Prasenjit?
Yeah, sure. So the Ahoms, it is believed that they actually migrated from Thailand, and their ancient capital was a place called Sipsagar. So that is where you still have some of the monuments still standing, but a lot of them have actually kind of gone, not well maintained. But now the archaeological ASI Archaeological Survey of India has taken quite a lot of steps, and the birth anniversary of Lachit Borphukan was amazing general is being celebrated in a very big way. So,
Yep.
one of the interesting things is that in the National Defense Academy in Pune, there are only two statues of Indian generals. One is Shivaji Maharaj, and the second is Lachit Borphukan. And
Yep.
he was another thing people, when they talk about Mughal invasions and Mughal war, like fighting the Mughals, they only think of elephants, horses, and camels and foot soldiers. But
Yep.
what happened in Assam was that Lachit Borphukan was able to defeat a huge Mughal navy. So this was a naval battle
Yep.
that took place in Assam, and it was not once. They had I won't exactly give the number, but he actually defeated them a couple of times. And Assam was not conquered by the Mughals. Later on, the British came in, and there was some kind of a treaty, and we did have tea plantations and coal mining and all of that happening. But Assam was not conquered by any Islamic invaders or so.
Yep.
It's kind of my fault, but the names of all these temples, like the Kamakhya temple that you see today, are have been built by Ahom kings. But I get their names mixed up, so I will not actually mention their names.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I think we kind of touched upon, right? Even in mainstream, we barely discuss this enough, or it's spoken about. It's not spoken about
Yeah,
enough,
it's
right?
a beautiful Bollywood plot. Someone should make a movie about it. Like seriously.
No, yeah, seriously, especially the contributions they've made to this region, and like you mentioned, ruling for over 600 years. And imagine, like the Mughals had pretty much taken over all places around, right? Like for example, they were there in Bengal for the longest time.
Assam was a huge state, so Nagaland, Meghalaya, parts of Arunachal, they were all part of Assam. Earlier on, the capital of Assam was actually in Shillong, so it was a huge territory and had a lot of natural resources. There were stories that you go to one of the rivers and you just put a net there and you'll get gold. That is how rich the state was.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mighty Mughals, as we have been hearing, even they were not able to conquer this place. So kind of speaks to the bravery and the courage and the rule of the Ahoms, right? So definitely needs to be spoken about more. And to your point, the NDA has been actually also giving out the Lachad Borphukan gold medal for the best cadet, right? So they've been doing this for a little while as well. So that kind of speaks to it, to his contributions too. And we recently celebrated the 400th year anniversary. So a lot of important things that we don't come across enough or give enough importance. And thank you for you and for Kamakhya Walks actually making these at least a little bit more mainstream to the layperson, right? We actually did a pretty well-rounded and detailed coverage of the Kamakhya temple complex, its importance, the different beliefs and the ties to tantric worship, and a little shed some light on that too, and covered a lot of important things. What are some of the other kinds of walks, let's say in and around Guwahati, that you take your audience to or your walkers around, Prasenjit?
So let's say when the old Guwahati has expanded in a very big way, but let's say if you call it old Guwahati, is a place called Uzan Bazaar. So there are some very beautiful Assam type houses. So when you hear the word bungalow, right? So it's Bangla style of architecture. That's how the word has come about. So similarly, there's very beautiful traditional houses here, and a lot of prominent people have lived in these places. So there's a university, which, as I was talking, which has done research on Kamakhya. So a lot of important people have passed out, and this is all along the Brahmaputra. So in the morning, when you go for a walk, you actually get to see beautiful flower markets, old buildings, some important temples, and now they have actually built a cable car. So this is one of the few cable cars that actually goes across a river. So normally when you go on a cable car, it's on a mountain or something. So
Right.
we basically do a walk along the riverside, show some of the old buildings, like the right now the present High Court judge lives in a particular building. You cannot enter it, but it's a stunning building. And then we go for a walk in Uzan Bazaar. So there's a temple called Ugratara Temple, again a very old place. We saw some of the old houses in that area. That is what one of the other walks we're doing. And we are also focusing on doing like 1 and 2 day sightseeing tours in and around Guwahati. We have a national park which is called Pobitora, which is about 1.5 hours from here, and it has got the highest density of one-horn rhinos. Close to Pobitora, we have a village called Mayang. So Mayang is known as the black magic capital of the world.
Oh,
There are
wow,
some
okay.
people who are developing some kind of a walk around the village, and they have actually made a museum of artifacts that were used and so on. And then there are places like Bhima Shankar, which is a Jyotirlinga. We have a Umananda Island, which is the smallest inhabited island in the world. So in Assam we have the largest inhabited island and the smallest inhabited island.
Right, right. The largest one being Majuli, which we
Yeah.
did an episode on as well, and I'll be happy to link that in the show notes. But yeah, quite the diversity and the difference also there, right, between the largest and the smallest river
You
in
can
Mayang.
actually spend good 2 days here, just exploring different sites. The
Yeah.
government right now is making huge efforts to promote tourism in the city. So just
Yeah.
about 2 days back, they've announced that for the next 3 months till the monsoons, they're going to have a tourism festival happening on the sandbanks of the river. So they're going to have like food, dance, and so on going on every day. So this is like activities for guests to come and experience. They're making a beautiful like a corridor along the river. So they have already made this Brahmaputra Heritage Center. It's like a museum overlooking the Brahmaputra, got good space for kids and so on, and has nice artifacts documenting the history of the city of Assam.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot, right? I mean, from even beyond those 1 to 2 day walks, that 1 to 2 day tours that you mentioned, if somebody is willing to stay, take it slow and explore, the state and the surrounding areas has a lot to offer, right? Just beyond being a
Yeah.
like a transit point for other states in the northeast, right? Right from I read about these very famous Gurudwara in Dhubri to
Yes,
popular mosque right
in
in the
Hajo.
region
Yeah,
within Assam in Hajo.
yeah.
There's popular Buddhist sites too.
Yeah, so Hajo is a center for Hindu, Buddhist, and Islam. So in Hajo, they have Muslims go to this place called Pwa Mecca. So Pwa in Assamese means 1/4. So when you go and visit Pwa Mecca, you get 1/4 of the blessings of going to Mecca.
Yeah, so a lot of things really unknown to many, right? So it's great to actually even understand and learn that there's so much more that one can do even within the country, right? Without having to leave the country, and even beyond these, right? Beyond religious places, national parks like Kaziranga and Manas, right? That's another angle to tourism, right? For those who are
Exactly. Yeah.
more interested in nature, there's that. There's bird watching tours. I think even you do around the Nilachal Hills. Nilachal Hill that can be done.
We are developing a arts and craft tour, maybe for the coming season, not this year, but next year we'll be doing an arts and craft tour. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
bell metal work. There's cane and bamboo work. There's traditional jewelry. So we want to basically take people to show these things. So I had a request for like a textile tour. So we are
Yeah.
combining textiles, arts, and craft.
The silks of Assam are also very, very famous and popular, right? Do you want to just give the listeners an overview of, let's say, the gumcho, I think, right? They call you.
Yeah, we just got the GI tag for the gamusa.
Exactly.
Yeah, every household, if you go to not in the city, but you go to any rural countryside, generally the women do not buy clothes. So everything they are wearing, they'll have a loom in their backyard, and everything that they use, what they wear, is made by them. Assam, about an hour and a half from Guwahati, is a place called Hualkusi, which is known as Manchester of the East. You have the most famous silk is called Muga silk. So Muga is a
Right.
very strong, naturally golden fiber, and then the other ones are Path, Eri. So we have, I think, four types of silk, out of which Muga is very well known. But my favorite is Eri because it's something like Pashmina. So you can actually carry it in the winters and it keeps you warm. You can also have it in summers, kind of keeps you, protects you from the sun. So it is known for its UV protection qualities.
That was also like one of a kind that I came across, right? When you're
Yeah.
talking about silk and UV protection, that's kind of neat. So, yeah, very, very important, or have been very important and well known from back in the day as well. And the I don't know, the traditional wear, Mekhela Chador, I
Yes,
think
Mekhela
the
Sadar.
saris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the those and the gamchas like we mentioned earlier. Those ones.
It's like a three-piece suit that the
Yeah.
men wear. That's something similar for what
Yeah.
women. So there's Riha, Mekla, and Chadar, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of important things and a few other things like bell metal works and stuff for handicrafts. You mentioned. I think those are also important, and for those interested, I could definitely cover those off. And how can we forget about the food of the region? Prasenjit, can you do you want to give a quick overview of if one is visiting Assam or Guwahati? What should be maybe a couple of things you should definitely try out and that are popular in the region?
Uh, we don't eat very. We do have the hottest chili in the world, which is the Bhut Jolokia. But
Yeah, the
generally,
ghost peppers.
yeah, ghost peppers. But generally, our food is very simple. It's like boiled, steamed, not many masalas, not many spices. Well-known, like more popular dishes in Assam is something called as tenga. So it's a sour curry. You can have it with fish. It's a fish preparation. You can have like we call them board. It's like lentil balls, which is put in this curry. We are a rice and fish eating community mostly, and we do have a lot of different tribes in the state. You do find a lot of vegetarian food available, but we love our non-veg. So we eat like duck, pigeons, and pork is also very good. One of my favorite dishes is bamboo shoot and pork. And then we have traditional barbecues, which is called korika. You just put meat on a stick and put it next to a fire. And then desserts are some simple, like mostly like kheer. And our breakfast consists of things like curd, the traditional ones, curd, flattened rice, mori, which is puffed up rice, and then we have this bora sal, which is like sticky rice, and we have liquid gur. So those are the traditional breakfasts. Some people still do eat them on a daily basis, but we generally have it during Bihu. So Bihu breakfast is like all these traditional foods together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of important ones you called out there. But if you want to make it a little more exotic, I also came across things like silkworm fry,
Yes,
right? If you
silkworm
want
fry.
to
Yeah.
mix it up a little bit, that's one thing. But as you mentioned as well, the bamboo shoots and rice and pork, those are the, I think, very well-known ones, along with bhoot jolokia, the ghost peppers, or one of the hottest peppers that are found just in the.
Also, a lime. The lemon that we produce here is very different. So the flavor is very unique, very refreshing. So you just have like dal, chawal, chilies, and nimbu, and that's good enough.
Okay, yeah, a lot of interesting things, and dao onla, or chicken and rice powder. I believe that's also something that's popular in the region. Yeah, if you're a foodie, there's definitely a lot of things for you. Some of them known, and some of them very new and exotic that you may want to try out when you're here. And red ant eggs, amroli porur tup. So some of the things I just came across when I was doing my research. So I just don't go by my research and look it up for yourself. But the bottom line being that there's a lot of very, very interesting things from a gastronomic perspective too that one can explore and discover during your visit and stay in Guwahati and in Assam. Lastly, just closing this off with the very, very popular celebration of Bihu, which you made a quick mention of. Prasenjit, do you want to give listeners a quick overview about this very, very popular festival that's often synonymous with Assam?
Yeah. So Bihu is it's the celebration of the different cycles of agriculture or of farming. Our new year is in April, which we call Bohag Bihu. So Bohag Bihu is basically, if you put Bihu on Google, you'll see girls and boys dancing.
Right.
That is generally in April, which is like a celebration of dance, music, food, and but the one that is coming up is Mag Bihu. So Mag Bihu revolves mostly around food. This is the end of the harvesting season. So from January to April, it is like all the harvesting is done. They have sorted out the grains, and then they take a break for those 3-4 months. January ends the cycle of this thing, and April starts it. So Bohag is for dance and celebration. The January Mag Bihu is for food. And then we also have another Bihu which is called as Kati Bihu. And this is celebrated in a very small way where you light these earthen lamps. It is believed that this is the time where you have a lot of insects in the field. So the insects are attracted to the fire, and it's kind of a pest control that happens. So these festivals also coincide with Onam and Pongal and other celebrations, Makar Sankranti.
Sure.
So there are common festivals around India.
Yeah, definitely try to that, and also the importance of rice and farming in the region, right? They
Yes.
kind of highlight that too. But yeah, thank you so much for giving us such a lovely, lovely encapsulation of Guwahati and Assam, and even things beyond that, right from the spiritual aspects of it through the Kamakhya walks that you offer to the more cultural aspects of it that we discussed during the latter half of the episode. And like we mentioned right at the beginning, more attention and eyeballs, more footfalls, whatever it takes. It deserves all of these things, right? It's such an important part of India that hasn't gotten enough attention, a very, very unexplored and undiscovered gem. And I think your tagline I believe, for Kamakhya Walks encapsulates it, right? The more you explore, the more you discover. So thank you so much, Prasenjit, for giving us such a lovely summary of literally the gateway to the Northeast. For listeners who are interested in taking up walks with you, what is the best way of learning more about them and getting in touch with you?
Facebook page is pretty good. My weak point is social media. So I'm actually asking someone to handle my social media. But we have an Instagram page and we have Facebook. I'm sure you can share the link. I can share it with you.
Yep.
Just drop me a message whenever you want to go for a walk. We'll be more than happy to take you around and show you the city and tell you about the Northeast.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those interested, even beyond Kamakhya and Assam, there's a variety of other tours in the Northeast region that Prasenjit does through his other venture, the 6 Degree Adventures. Definitely do check those out as well. All of these links will be included in the show notes. And we look forward to having Prasenjit back on the podcast maybe sometime in the future to discuss more about his other works in Northeast, other trips and tours in Northeast that he does. But it has been such a lovely experience talking to you and learning more about Assam and Guwahati. Thanks so much, Prasenjit.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure talking to you.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.